Hello everyone, my name is Maria. I'm the social worker at the Jacob Burns Community Legal Clinics, and I'll be guiding you through this training today on boundaries in the law clinic setting. Our agenda for this training, Section 1 will focus on defining what a boundary is. Section 2 will talk about forming your boundaries. Section 3, getting clear on what your yes means. Section 4 will use your yes to shape your no. And Section 5 will wrap it up with some tips for managing your yes. Our previous social worker, Bonnie, created this handout to correlate with this presentation. So if you have it handy, feel free to follow along with it. It has a good synthesis on the main points that will be presented throughout this training. Section 1, Boundaries. So what even is a boundary? Based on your life experience, you'll have an idea of what a boundary is within a personal setting, a professional setting, and now we're going to focus a little bit more on what that means in the law clinic setting. For this context, professional boundaries define effective and appropriate interactions between an attorney and the client. They mark the place where one individual ends and the other begins. In life, there are many areas where boundaries are used, usually to facilitate what roles, what behavior, what functioning is supposed to happen within a certain area, whether that be sports, in school, in religion, even in your social group. There are norms, there are boundaries that you don't cross with if it's a close friend versus your significant other. And it's important to note that boundaries are not only the things that we let in, but also what we let out, how we interact with others, how we take care of ourselves, with the fundamental principle being that we alone are responsible for our own well-being. In the legal clinic setting, it's important to focus on a couple of types, where your clear boundaries are for yourself versus the shared space that you have with a client, where there are boundaries that still exist, but very clear roles. So for your personal life, with your own clear boundaries, you have chosen to become a student attorney. So the boundary you've made is to be a student attorney and not some other profession, some other career, some other role. There's also the boundary between your personal life versus your professional and academic life. And then there are many areas in our lives that will not touch what we're doing with the client in the clinic setting. The shared space, like I was saying, you have boundaries there still where your client has certain duties and roles that they have to fulfill. You have certain duties and roles that you have to fulfill for your client as well as for other clients you might have. You're working towards a common goal, but that doesn't mean that every little thing about your client invades all the other cases that you're working on or the other things that you're working on in your other professional or personal areas of your life. This infographic is very helpful in understanding the different types of boundaries that we have in life, whether they are relationship boundaries, physical boundaries, time boundaries, which are very important when you're juggling various things, especially with the clinic setting, content boundaries, conversational boundaries. So these give us a good snapshot also of examples, what these are, where we might encounter these things in our life. So now that we have a little bit more clarity on what a boundary is and the different types that we might encounter in the professional, in the personal setting, we might ask why. Why are we talking about this? Why is this important? As a student attorney, you will likely work with clients that may push your boundaries in different ways. Setting boundaries is a critical way and an important skill for you to prevent burnout, but also to ensure that you're accomplishing necessary goals, that you're fulfilling relevant expectations for your role, and ultimately committing to your yes as a student attorney. Take, for example, these scenarios. What if a client adds you on social media? What if a client is in a tight spot and needs some money? What if a client is calling you or emailing you all hours of the night for quote-unquote emergencies? How do you professionally and appropriately respond to maintain your boundaries and to provide services to your client with excellence? As we move through this presentation, it'll be easier for you to answer this question. But it's important to remember, there's a very specific reason why your client has come to you. Clients come to lawyers with legal problems that they are unable to solve, and lawyers have been granted the power and the privilege to seek justice on behalf of their clients. Lawyers fight the good fight in order to right the wrong. Your clients may be going through a number of problems in their personal lives. However, you have to remember that your goal, your focus, should be on the legal problem that they have presented to you. That is their need that you can fill. Everything else is just outside of your arena in this moment. In addition to setting boundaries to ensure that you can fulfill your role as a student attorney, it's also important to create and maintain those boundaries to help in the long run in avoiding having recurring issues with a quote-unquote problem client, losing referrals, disciplinary complaints, and hopefully avoiding malpractice claims. So again, it is very important to set limits, to set boundaries, to maintain your own health, your own mental health, to attain the goals that you have set with your client and with yourself as a student attorney, and to ensure that neither of you are stepping outside of the bounds of the student attorney-client relationship. So moving on to section 2, how do you form these boundaries? Setting your boundaries begins with your yes. It begins with determining what goals you have and making a plan to accomplish those goals. As a student attorney, you're saying yes to the task of legally representing your client. As a result, it's also necessary for you to say no to other roles and responsibilities which could threaten your ability to fulfill your role as a student attorney. So, as this image shows, you can't be your client's therapist. You can't be your client's life coach, your client's friend. Those are all great things, but that's not the role or the position that you're holding in your client's life at this moment in time. So, for example, let's say you have a problem with your hearing and you go to your eye doctor and say, hey, I'm having a problem with my hearing. If your eye doctor steps out of their boundary as a medical professional to try and treat your hearing issue, then it would be a big problem because your hearing issue wouldn't be resolved by your eye doctor. In fact, they could do more damage than good. And they're not within their boundaries as a medical professional to refer you to the appropriate services and the appropriate provider. Likewise, if your client is coming to you with a need regarding, for example, an issue with their insurance, not having enough food for their family, obviously these are big things. You want to be able to help your client. But you also have the case in front of you that you should focus on. This is also why there's a social worker in the clinic to help in those situations where maybe there's a need that you're not quite sure you should assist with, but there's somebody else that you can refer your client to for those needs. So it's important for you to understand what scenarios exist where you will need to say no to your client, not because you wish them harm, not because you don't want to help them, but because there are those boundaries in place to help you fulfill your role and to ensure that your client is receiving the appropriate services that they need with excellence. So getting really clear on your yes will naturally help you to reveal what you must say no to. Standing firm in purposeful and appropriate boundaries will help you to accomplish your academic, your professional, and your personal goals, which will ultimately assist your clients through providing appropriate legal services with excellence. So how can we get clear on our yeses? How can we understand where we can say yes? You have to be clear on why you chose this profession in the first place. What was your initial motivation to become a student attorney or to go into the legal profession? What academic, professional, personal goals do you have that you'd like to accomplish in the semester during the course of your practice in the clinic? What specific tasks must you accomplish to attain those goals? Additionally, to clarify your yes, you can ask also, what role can you fulfill in your clinic to best assist your clients according to the expectations of your respective clinic? So you've said yes to being a student attorney, you've said yes to fulfilling a role in a particular clinic, you've said yes to helping your client with a specific legal problem. Using this yes, we can also understand what no's should I clarify to help maintain my boundaries. So, again, based on your yes, what roles and tasks or requests might you need to say no to this semester? It's important to know what your priorities are. As a student attorney, you obviously have other areas of your life that you've scheduled out for, whether that means doctor's visits, another job, studying time, self-care moments. So you have to recognize that you have very clear expectations of what times you have dedicated for your work in the legal clinic and what other areas of your life might suffer if you don't put those important no's into place. Now, it's important also to note that it's not easy to say no, especially if it's a request that is very crucial, that's very important. However, again, your boundaries exist not just for your own care, but also to ensure that you can best serve your client's needs with their legal issue. So, as uncomfortable as no is, it is very important for your end goal. It's also important to note some warning signs where maybe your boundaries are getting loose. They're not quite clear anymore. There could be things like your normal office hours are disrupted. You're altering your communication style where you're being more responsive at night, responding to calls and emails at all hours. Maybe getting too personally invested with a client's problems or disproportionately thinking about the case or about that client. These signs can help you to understand where you might be at risk for violating those boundaries. So, let's delve a little bit deeper on how we can really be firm on our yes so that we also know where we need to say no. Some questions that you can ask yourself: what are some things you might expect that will get in the way of your yes as a student attorney, as your role of a student attorney? Additionally, what professional tasks are expected of you as a student attorney in the clinic? What tasks are not expected of you? And also, what can you do? What can you dedicate yourself to? What can you stick to help you say yes as a student attorney at a clinic? If you do have that handout that I mentioned earlier, there is a nice little place where you can jot down a plan. You can focus on top 3 things that can help you to stick to your yes as a student attorney. So you can fill that section out if that would be helpful to you, but you can also make a mental note right now on some things that you could do to help you. You might also want to practice some statements to help you have clear, defined boundaries for what you're saying yes to in order to shape your no. For example, this semester I'm saying yes to answering emails within my 9 to 5 or whatever your office hours, which also means I'm saying no to answering emails during off hours when I'm not in the clinic, when I'm not actively trying to complete my role as a student attorney. Now, there's no way to foresee every event that might make you overstep your boundary. but it is important to have a general idea of where these problem areas could pop up to help you to also say no down the line if necessary. You can start with small boundaries. You need to ensure also that you have time to think about a request that has been made of you. So instead of immediately saying yes to something, you can say, I'll get back to you on that. And then ascertain if you need to make a referral, if it's just out of your scope, if you need to confer with a superior, whatever it is. It's important to have time if you're not comfortable also saying no in the moment. Saying, I'll get back to you on that is a nice way to say you're not ignoring their need, but also not promising that you can fulfill it in that moment. So now that we have a little bit more clarity on our yeses and our nos, we can go on to understanding how we can manage those boundaries. How can I maintain my yes for the duration of my time at the clinic this semester? So in general, these are some tips that you can use to maintain those boundaries. You can communicate consistently on your expectations that you've originally set with your client from the get-go. Sticking to those boundaries that you formed from the get-go, even if it's slightly uncomfortable, is another way that you can maintain those boundaries. Because if you start good and then you kind of fall off the bandwagon, it could lead to bigger issues down the line. It's okay to make mistakes. Obviously, don't let perfection be the enemy of the good, but communicating and sticking to those boundaries are important for you to be successful in this from start to finish during the semester. Maintain your professionalism throughout your time of representing the client, of course, and then reiterating the scope of your role to your client and even to yourself if needed throughout the semester. If there's moments where you're seeing those warning signs or your client has made repetitive requests that are outside of the scope of your role, it's okay to go back and say, hey, listen, this is what I can do for you. This is what is expected of me. I can't help you with that, but let me see if I can find someone who can. So with clients, these are some things you can think about when trying to manage your yes. When a client comes to you with a certain request, you should stop, think, and consider, does what they're asking me fall within the realm of my legal responsibilities as a student attorney? You should validate your client's needs. Even if those roles and responsibilities do not fall within your realm as a student attorney, it is important to ensure that clients don't feel disregarded or ignored. Even if you can't help with that immediate need, it's important to say, I hear you, I understand what you're saying, but in this moment, I can't fulfill that role. Let me help you find someone that can. Reinforce your commitment to engage in your appropriate role and to fulfill appropriate responsibilities as the student attorney. So again, refocusing on what is the legal problem at hand that is your task to fulfill to help them in their ultimate goal. Communicate to and with your client. So link communication back to your client's goals. And finally, as we already said, provide referrals to your clients to transfer them to the appropriate support system to assist with whatever ongoing need that they have presented to you that you're not able to fulfill. So if it's a social need, the social worker is here to help. If they have insurance questions, if they have food needs, if they have issues finding a medical provider, whatever it is, if it's something in that realm, feel free to refer them my way because I'm here also to assist with that. We focused obviously on the client-student attorney relationship for the majority of this presentation, but it's also important for you to recognize how you can maintain healthy boundaries within the clinic setting. So again, you want to stop, think, and consider. How can I ensure that I'm applying the yeses learned in the classroom in order to support my work with my client? So what have I learned so far this semester? What would be important for me to include in this discussion, to include in my game plan for that ultimate goal that I'm working on with my client? Keep in regular communication with your clinic. Ask for clarification of assignments and tasks as necessary. If you're unsure of something, don't be afraid to ask. This is a wonderful skill, not just in the professional setting, in the personal setting as well. You want to make sure that you clarify so that you know what you need to do and that you understand what that means. Finally, lean on your clinic support system. Consult your supervising attorney, your clinic director, colleagues, even classmates when appropriate. Ask for help when you need it and be willing to receive it. And then finally, of course, how do you maintain your yes, the yes that you've made with yourself? Again, stop, think, consider. Do these things that I'm currently saying yes to in my personal life allow me to maintain my yeses in my academic and clinical spaces? Everybody has their own different needs, their own different hobbies, enjoyment, whatever it is for self-care. This question also refers to those areas in our personal lives that may become problem areas that conflict with our commitment to the clinic. So make sure you think, you consider, and where are some areas that you may need to adjust a little bit to help you maintain your goals for your personal, your academic, and your professional life. Take care of yourself. Self-care is super important. Eat, sleep, do fun things that you enjoy. Set realistic goals for yourself. Invest in your relationships, in the academic setting, in the professional setting, in the personal setting. These relationships, these healthy relationships, hopefully, can support you with your yeses and help you to stick to your no. This is important, for example, in your academic setting. If you have a professor who you maybe are struggling in their course, maybe you don't understand a certain concept or something that you've learned, be more familiar with that professor. Make sure that they understand, hey, I'm struggling with this. I'd really like to apply it in my clinic setting, but I'm not quite clear how to do that. Can you help me? Do you have office hours? Can we talk on the phone? In your personal life, you may have many friends that you want to hang out with. Make sure you have time for those things. That's super important. But also make sure that social outings are not crowding the space that you've reserved maybe for studying or for practicing a little bit more on your legal practice. And then take a regular inventory of how you're doing. Make a commitment to yourself to seek out support when you need it, whether that means for your physical health, for your mental health. Make sure that you're keeping track of areas in your life that may be suffering, because if you start to slip in certain areas, it will impact the rest of your system. At GW, there is a great resource for students in the Colonial Health Center. So if you do find that you're struggling a little bit with your mental health and you may need counseling or psychological services, don't hesitate to reach out to them for confidential counseling, for a non-judgmental space where you can talk, where you can share, when you can think a little bit more on what's going on in your life and where you might need a little bit of help. And some final thoughts on boundaries, on yeses and nos. Remember, it's not a perfect game. It won't always be easy to say no. You may struggle at times to maintain your yeses, but it is important for you to have a clear goal to understand your role as a student attorney and where you will need to enforce those boundaries to help you with your self-care, but also to ensure that you're fulfilling your role as a student attorney with excellence. Thank you all so very much to tuning into this training. I appreciate your attentiveness. I will be sending out my contact information, so if in future at any moment you need help on a case for the client through the community law clinic social worker, you can feel free to reach out to me. Again, this is Maria. I will be sending out my contact info, and feel free to reach out through the appropriate channels when you feel I can assist you with anything. Thank you very much.